Hi there. Welcome to Ask the Fascia Masters. My name is Deanna Hansen. I'm the founder of Fluid Isometrics and Block Therapy. Block therapy is a self-care fascia-based practice. The focus of this practice is to melt adhesions and scar tissue that become riddled throughout the fascia system with the goal of resuming flow to and from the cells. As long as the body has flow, everything is good. So I'm so excited to be here with you and answering the questions that come up through all of our podcasts and information. On a previous video, a question came up that was very interesting. They asked, what happens to fascia when a person is paralyzed, which is a really interesting question. The thing to understand about fascia is that every single cell membrane connects to every other cell membrane through the fascia system. And it is all about communication between the cells as well as the structural integrity of the body. The combination of both collagen and elastin primarily make up the contents of the fascia. The collagen gives us the stability, the elastin gives us the mobility. So when we have some kind of an impact injury that creates a paralysis, what's ultimately happening is scar tissue is getting in the way, blocking flow of blood and oxygen to those areas that are on the other side of that. And that affects the nerves, it affects the circulatory system. Basically, what's going to happen with that lack of movement is gravity and the way that the body has been patterned prior to that injury are going to continue to accumulate and pull the body down. Being able to understand this and then also work with the system is a way to help manage and even prevent damage in the future. Another question came in asking about eczema on the elbows. And this is also a great question because eczema can show up anywhere in the body. And the reality is, if our body is open and spacious and there's optimal flow, waste leaves through the proper channels in the body. What happens over time as we're patterned in our negative alignments, we have areas of blockage. So sometimes toxins are going to come through the skin. So if it's coming through the elbows, that's an indication that above and below are impacted in some way. So a really good way to simply address this would be working between the fingers. If you can do this for 3 minutes between each finger, every single day, you're going to start to create energy and flow and release some of that negative patterning at the foundation of what's causing this issue. A question came in from Gail, a 69-year-old who prior to a fall was very physically active and healthy. And then this fall created a lot of pain primarily on her left side, affecting her hip, her knee, and really her whole body. And that's the thing with those kinds of traumas. When we have an impact injury, the whole body gets jarred. What can we do about it? What we really need to do is understand how to address the fascia so that we can pull the cells back to proper alignment. And that's really the system of fascia decompression that we've created. Because as soon as we have a jarring injury, the breath becomes compromised, the negative patterns that our body were already in become accentuated. And what we really want to do is we want to bring, again, that understanding of proper foundation and breath back into the body. But first we need to melt those adhesions and the scar tissue that were created from the injury. And she also mentioned that she had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means she has a connective tissue disorder, which means those ligaments can become very lax. This program is really helpful for all of that. We have many in our community that have connective tissue disorders and are using block therapy to repattern their body and to create that proper stability. With any connective tissue disorder, what you often see is such a hyper restriction in the diaphragm, causing the limbs to be lax. And then it creates that instability when you're standing or doing movement. So what we want to do is we want to repattern the whole body so that we can bring balance to the fascia. The collagen and the elastin combined together in proper balance create both structure and mobility. It's when the collagen migrates to create false walls and false floors that the body ends up being left unstable. I do recommend jumping into our private Facebook community, block therapy community, so that you can also ask questions there and you can have people that also experience these kinds of things giving you solutions as well. To add, we have 2 wonderful videos that we're going to share the links to below so that you can dive in and you can see from Pam Hoffman, who had a knee replacement and then a fall and broke her ankle. It's a fascinating story and how she handled it, as well as Mel Gurry, who's one of our instructors who also has connective tissue disorder, and she's used block therapy to support her along her journey. Emily asked about mottling in the legs. So she mentions that she has tanned legs but white blotches. That's an indication that there is a lack of blood flow in those areas where those white blotches are, and that the adhesions have gripped onto the bone in the legs, blocking that flow. Block therapy fascia decompression will absolutely help this, because this is what it's really all about. It's understanding how to release those adhesions that are locking the tissue from receiving proper amounts of blood and oxygen, and that also keep the toxins stuck and stored in that tissue. So this will be a great approach. And again, if you want to just give it a try initially, you can start with our $9 sampler program. A question came up, is there a blocking routine for cold feet? And yes, 100%, because we actually have a video called Death Starts in the Feet, and cold feet is the precursor to that. Ultimately, the reason that feet will become cold first is they are the furthest distance from the engine of the body, the diaphragm. What we want to do is we want to bring that blood and oxygen into the feet. So block therapy in general is a great approach because it addresses the whole body, and we have to get that breath going. That is the body's furnace. If you're breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, it's like you have a space heater trying to heat the entire body. I live in a 30-story building, and if I have a space heater in my 2-bedroom apartment, I can only heat one room. However, if you turn on the furnace for the building, the entire building becomes heated. So we need to think of the diaphragm as the body's furnace. And we have adhesions that are locking the diaphragm away as well. So with block therapy or fascia decompression techniques, we look at the entire body. We want to make sure that we get that breath activated, but then we also want to be sure that we start addressing the work between the toes, because this is literally the furthest. Taking a finger, a pencil, putting pressure between each and every toe for a minimum of 3 minutes while you really focus on that full exhale. I always tell people you want to have that concept of living in the exhale. So many people are breathing shallow through the upper chest. We really want to bring the breath down to the belly, breathing in and out through the nose, and make the exhale the greater of the phase of the breath. So I always say exhale for a count of 6, inhale for a count of 4. And you want to exhale fully and completely before engaging that inhale. That also increases the carbon dioxide in the blood so that we can actually transfer the oxygen from the hemoglobin molecules into the cell. People that are breathing through the muscles of the upper chest, they're simply not getting that oxygen into the cells, which is why areas become cold. So as a starting point, connect to that breath, work between the toes, 3 minutes for sure, because we can't rush through this. And if you do that every day, you're going to start to see changes from that work alone. But if you want to dive into the full practice, then it becomes that full body program for you. Recently, we shared a video talking about pain in the tailbone, and I referenced one exercise there. And then under there, somebody asked if this would help coccydynia, which means basically pain in the tailbone. Yes, it absolutely will. That one exercise alone is a good starting point, but whenever we're dealing with pain anywhere in that area of the low back, we really want to look at the patterning of the feet and the legs, because that affects the pelvis, which is going to affect everything up the chain. And specifically in that area, I would definitely dive into block therapy as a starting point if this is something you've been dealing with for a long time. One other additional thing you can do aside from that one exercise, if you're wanting to just give this a try as well, is roll up a towel and then place it this way and sit on it. So you're creating more room in the perineum. Whenever the pelvis, there's issues in the low back or the pelvis, the hip joints aren't seated properly in that space, and that will affect the alignment of the perineum. So that's a really good way to create some balance. And then another thing you can do to add is take a hardcover book or a pillow or some kind of block that has substance, place it between the legs when you're seated. Have your knees at 90 degrees and squeeze whatever you're holding in place. Try to do that for up to 3 minutes while you focus on that full exhale. That squeezing action is going to bring some balance and symmetry into the pelvis as well. So these are a couple of things that you can just add right away. But again, it really does come down to the entire patterning of the lower body. And so if you want to give that $9 sampler program a try, that's also something you can do. A question came in about arthritis, pain in the knee, and if there's anything that can be done with that. What we need to understand is when we don't have proper foundations in the body, we end up relying on the ligaments to create the stability for the body, as opposed to supporting our body with proper foundation and using our muscles to hold us up properly. So typically, when you see people with arthritis in the knee, they're standing with hyperextension. When we do that, we don't have control over where our body is being led, and gravity and unconscious living are basically doing the driving for that. To be able to bring some understanding into foundation is key. And one of the things that you can start with right away is work between the toes. You want to spend 3 minutes with a finger or a pencil between each toe, and you want to see that the toes are spreading. Look down first at your feet and notice which toes are closer together. These are the ones you really want to spend time with so that we can bring that space. But then after that, then we want to pump up the tires. Think that your feet are tires and we want them to be nice and filled. If you had a flat tire on your car and you ended up leaving it for a month and you had problems in your car, to go and fix the problems and not fix the tire, that's not going to give you the solution. So addressing the knee alone won't be the solution. It's understanding how to bring that foundation back into play. So after you release the toes, stand in front of the mirror, have your feet directly underneath your hip joint, so pretty close together, facing straight ahead. Slightly bend those knees and then grip the toes for 10 slow, full exhales. Exhaling for a count of 6, inhale for 4. That's going to be like pumping up the tires. Do that every day and see what happens with your knee, and let us know in the comments below. Another person asked about connective tissue disorder and if block therapy will help or hinder. It will definitely help. Again, I'm going to reference Mel Gurry's interview here. She has the connective tissue disorder, as well as Eowyn, who also has connective tissue disorder, and we've shared a success story with her. She also has some additional tips in that video of other things that she did along with block therapy to support her through the process. So watch those two, dive into our block therapy Facebook community so that you can also reach out to them, because they're in there and they also do answer. So you're going to be getting responses from people that are actually going through the process and gaining benefits. Someone asked about plant-based diets and are they healthy or not? First of all, I want to share that I'm not one to talk about nutrition. That is not my lane. However, I do have my personal opinion, which I'm happy to share. I believe some body types are going to be far better at digesting meat than other body types. If you look at the different body types, I'm an adrenal body type. And what they actually say for the adrenals is you need less protein. The reason that I stopped eating meat was because my body wasn't digesting it well. And that may have been because I had some other issues going on, but I found that if I was eating meat, my digestion was sluggish, my elimination wasn't very good, and I just simply didn't feel good eating meat. That's the thing when it comes to nutrition, it's not about following what other people say as much about following what your body says. If you feel good with what you're doing, that's what you should be doing. If your body doesn't feel good, then I would try doing other things. And that was my reasoning. I loved meat. I loved eating it when I was younger, but my body didn't deal with it well. But again, we all have to make choices based on where we are in our health. Body types do, I believe, come into play. Some people are going to thrive with meat, other people aren't. So it really does come down to what your body needs and to listen to your body, because no matter what anybody says, it's all about how you feel. Someone asked the question about how to address the nervous system if blocking alone isn't giving the results that you're looking for. First of all, the thing about the nervous system, it is intimately connected to your breathing pattern. And that's why in block therapy, we have as our second pillar, understanding proper diaphragmatic breathing. And just because one is blocking doesn't mean that they're really gaining that understanding of the breath. I would highly recommend you read James Nestor's book called Breath. It is filled with incredible information. The key about connecting to the exhale, that is what turns on the parasympathetic nervous system. When we're in that state, the brain is in a relaxed state. It also puts the body in that rest and digest mode. That's where we need to be to heal. It could be that you're attempting to do the work with the block, but you're really not gaining proper access to your breath. And we do need to start in the core and the rib cage, because if you're, say, blocking your calf muscle, but you haven't released those adhesions that have locked the diaphragm, then you're not gaining that second pillar, which is really the foundation of all of this. So if you have the opportunity, again, I do recommend you read James Nestor's book and see if you get any insights from there. Someone asked, and they mentioned that this would not be a good dinner table conversation about blocking and hemorrhoids. And yes, this is something really important to understand because it all comes down to compression and ballooning. And really, that's what's going on in the entire body. When we have an area that is locked away, think of squeezing a balloon on one side and how the other side expands. That's really what's going on with everything. Whether we have a belly that we can't get control over, or a saddlebag, or an aneurysm, it all comes down to that same concept. So a hemorrhoid is no different. And what we need to look at is the patterning of the feet, how your foundation is pulling away from midline, which will affect the hips inside. And as you compress inside the pelvis, you're going to have situations like hemorrhoids or prolapses or any kinds of those things. It really comes down from the same thing, just specifically where those areas of compression are. Start, give it a try, and let us know if it helps. Someone asked if fascia decompression block therapy can help with trigger point pain, and this person shared that primarily traps and SCMs. And yes, absolutely, because what's happening, this will be driven first from your foundation and your arms and hands, but essentially the rib cage is becoming impacted, getting pulled forward and down, and now these muscles are being triggered to try to hold up the body, which will be exhausting and create long-term pain. So we really need to look at the entire system. Where are those anchors? Imagine walking around with a 20-pound weight in one hand for a month. How would your body have to respond to that pressure, that force, in order to stay upright? That's kind of what's happening with the feet as well as the hands in their alignment. They become these anchors to the rest of the body. That's why we look at the full body and we address the full body with fascia decompression, because simply working on the areas of concern will never gain you the freedom to get to the next level. You'll just constantly be in management. We want to take it to a place where you can have a new foundation, new patterns for your fascia. So give it a try and let us know if it helps. Another question came in about hernias, and just so you know, we do have a video on that, which we will put in the link below. But the thing to understand about hernias, like everything else when it comes to fascia, is there's going to be an area of compression causing a ballooning, and that's what a hernia is. The innards coming through something. So an inguinal hernia is really sharing that the pelvis isn't properly aligned, which will be driven from your foundation. To correct the foundation and bring everything back into alignment will allow that hip joint to come back, taking that pressure and stress off of the tissue so that it no longer has to protrude through the ligament. Yes, absolutely give it a try. If you want to even start with just working between the fingers and the toes and then standing and gripping those toes for 10 full breaths after you do that, that would be a great start, because the feet are really the issue when it comes to those. That wraps up episode 5 of Ask the Fascia Masters. Thank you so much for your time and attention with this. I appreciate the questions that come in and to be able to connect with you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.